Well, what about I know that you went to Italy and stationed there at one time.
Well, after basic training, after a delay en route, visiting the folks back to camp, long train rides, but we were young, we could take it. And we finally ended up in the 442, but let me tell you how we got there finally. This was our training cycle ended in February. We had this delay en route back home. It was a furlough, I suspect. You could call it a furlough, but it was a delay en route. We actually had time enough to get back to camp and spend a few days. And I actually took time off to take the northern way back through Minneapolis, because two of my brothers were going through language school up there. And so that's exactly what I did. And I saw them for one day, then moved down to Chicago, my old stomping grounds, and looked up a couple of buddies. And beyond that, I then reported back to Fort something in Maryland. Can't recall the name of the fort. And from that assembly area, our training group, so we knew each other, were assembled and moved off to Camp Shanks in New York, upper New York, up the river. Camp Shanks was a port of embarkation, I think, or at least that was an assembly area for a port of embarkation. Now it's getting to be early March. And after maybe about 2-3 days at Camp Shanks, New York, we were put on board a troop ship in New York Harbor. And this was because none of them were that old, Liberty ship. They were all within a few years of building them. They were that new, but they were pretty rocky. They weren't all that too seaworthy, I don't think. But hey, this is all we had, and we made the best of it. But going over on this troop ship, this Liberty ship, from day one out of New York Harbor, I was sick. I went up for breakfast that first morning and took one look and, you know, and that was enough. It wasn't storming all that bad, but the ship was moving, and I'm not a sailor, obviously, and I was sick from day one till time we got off. Story of my life.
Is that how you got to Italy, or how
That-
did you get?
Well, we disembarked at Le Havre, France, amongst the whatever bits and pieces that we could see of leftover Normandy parts. They had a makeshift wharf, dock. I'm not sure what they were built out of, but they were prefabricated steel units floating out there as docks, and somehow they anchored them to be sturdy enough to be used as docks. And after about a month of evasive action on the Atlantic, the ship docks in Le Havre, France. And that's right at the mouth of the Seine River, which I find out later. But after long last, here I am in France, along with 300-400 other guys. And I'm trying to think what we did then. From there, now we were trained as replacements for 442. And so we were trying to catch up to the 442, which was in southern France. Okay, now Le Havre is up in the northwest coast of France. So we have to go all the way through France to catch up to these guys. And we knew that, but we were living strictly day to day. They marched us off into some railroad yards, and here's a train of a freight train. I mean, a real freight train. These 40 and 8 boxcars. We were loaded aboard those, and off we went, trying to find the 442, which was at that time in southern France, down in the Marseille area. And our journeys through France aboard these real freight cars. I mean, they were freight cars. There were nothing there. Just empty freight cars. Of course, we had our duffel bag and sleeping bag and whatever else, shelter half and blanket. So we made do, and we passed on the outskirts of France, outskirts of Paris, because way off in the distance, a guy says, "Hey, there's the Eiffel Tower." Okay, so we all had to see the little Eiffel Tower that was a speck in the distance, and that was all well and good. Now, by this time, this is late March. I mean, real late March. We finally get down to southern France and into a rebel depot, replacement depot that the Army always has here and there in the back area. We find that the 442 is pulled back into a rest area not too far from there. Some of the guys took off and went up to visit friends and brothers and cousins or whatever, and at that time, I didn't know one thing from another. I knew my brother was out of, he was reassigned from his unit because he was wounded, and after his recuperation, he was assigned to the quartermaster corps, I think. He was driving truck somewhere up in southern France. So I had nobody to look up or see as far as brothers are concerned. Now Bill was with the infantry, M Company, 3rd Battalion. Nebs was in the 522nd Field Artillery, which was still up in France someplace, but they didn't know exactly where. So we ended up in southern France. Finally got together with the unit that we're trained for. We weren't assigned to them. We're still replacements, individuals, unassigned. And when the 442 went back to Italy, we followed them back. We went to a rebel depot just outside of Florence in Italy. And from there, I think my imagination was getting the better of me. But this was about the time of the last offensive, that last push into the Po Valley. And I swear I could hear artillery fire somewhere close by. But, and about that time, my blood pressure goes up into the notch. And finally, out of a rebel depot in Italy, I'm assigned to the 442, and I get as far as some provisional service company of the 442, which was a unit left over from the regiment since they had all moved on ahead. They were successful, or so successful in their last offensive that the enemy was all the way north. They had retreated, and I can remember riding this service company truck, trying to catch up to the unit. Well, the offensive was so successful that there was a group of us temporarily assigned to service company that we were hard pressed to catch up to them. And we were in 6x, these Army trucks, double dual rear axles, and front wheel drive, the whole bit. We were riding those trucks, trying to catch up to them, full speed down the freeways of Italy, up the west side of Italy, up from Pisa to Genoa. We overnighted in Genoa in some bombed out factory of some sort. We recognized it as some sort of a factory building, but we saw nothing in there that would say what they ever had or made. But we overnighted there and then moved on ahead. And by that time they were almost to Milan, or even further north of Milan. There was a Getty airfield, and the unit was that far, and Getty airfield was designated and by this time the war was done in Italy, at least northern Italy. So the perfect timing, personally. I had all this travel and didn't fire a shot. At that stage, we finally caught up to the main body of the 442nd, and however they decided who goes where, it seems like it was all alphabetical. The O's go here, and the other guys go there. Do you remember Bear Omoto? Somehow, out of Chicago, we meet at Canton Blanding in the same training company, and I'm with him all this time, trying to get to Europe. And the O's, Omoto and Okazaki, were assigned to Able Company 100th Battalion. I mean, that's a prestige outfit. And they've got awards and ribbons galore. And as soon as you are one of them, I mean, they tell you, hey, you don't have any ribbon, but you have to wear this guy. and the ribbons were not earned by me personally, but by the unit. And so we're one of the big awards individuals along with the rest of them. And okay, speaking of Baramoto, we were in this airport area, and this was a designated surrender area for German troops in the area, and they came in voluntarily, convoy after convoy, and it was our job to process them. And we were told that they could have this, that, and the other, but they cannot have firearms, knives, or anything like that. And if they have firearms, you confiscate it. And Bear was in one of these search groups that apparently had an officer come through with a sidearm, and they are told to lay everything out of their total possessions, and the group from 442 would inspect them. And Bear was in this group that relieved this one officer of the sidearm. It happened to be a 32 caliber Beretta, I think. It was a small one. And this was fairly late in the processing. So it was a prize, is what it was. And there was a group of people, the 442 members that had to go see it and fondle it and do whatever they do with a weapon that's just been relieved from the enemy. But I was away from that particular group at the time, and I heard a pop. And apparently this pistol went off. Somebody had it. Bear was shot in the arm. The bullet was dangling just under the skin on his, I think it's his left elbow. Anyway, $1 million wound. So he's rushed off to medics, and that's the last I see of Bear. Because obviously he went to hospital or wherever they treated him, and And talk about $1 million wound. He was, you're going home, soldier, you know. And so I don't see him from there at that point on. But that particular weapon is still there. And on the examination area, and since Bear was the last one to have it, they said it was his. I mean, it was. And so I took possession of that particular gun and carried it with me throughout the remainder of the time I spent in Italy, and declared it as a war trophy. I brought it home. And I requested discharge at Fort Sheridan, Illinois, because my brother was there. Or out in Chicago at least. And I got the weapon back as far as Chicago, and Bear is living in Chicago, as I'm told. So I take this thing and it says, hey, here's your war trophy. That $1 million wound.